You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I spent 10 years in the national media and actually was on staff at Ole Miss. And we are joined by Zach Moreth from the Rebel Walk, who was in attendance at the most ultimate word salad press conference that I can remember in a long time.
That's probably the best way you can describe it, Steven. So yeah, like everyone knows, it's Furman week. There aren't a whole lot of important questions to be asked, but Steve and I were talking about before. I kind of made a mistake. We didn't ask about the backup quarterback situation, and that's a great point, which we were discussing, Steven. But that's kind of my question: is who's going to take over this game, and how early is it going to be? One of the things I will comment on is that Lane said they're probably going to focus on their run game a lot. Questionable injuries, especially in regards to Juice Wells and Jordan Watkins. I know Juice did participate in that scrimmage, according to the Ole Miss Instagram, which is awesome. But they're not going to rush anyone back, especially against Furman, when your first SEC game is week 4 against Kentucky.
Yeah, I will give Lane credit for a couple of things when it comes to press conference. His thing with injuries and the whole Juice Wells thing, just because of what's happened there, somebody has to he's not going to answer that question. And Lane has done a fantastic job of basically training that media corps to where nobody's going to ask anything real. He's not going to answer anything that does, and it's just going to be a wasted 15 minutes.
No, 100%, Steven. And that's how I feel. Like, I don't want to ask Lane that because I know I'm not going to get a real answer, and he's not going to give me like the truth. Like going back to last year, Caden Prescorn was going to play in that Alabama game, and he reported to Chris Lowe that he was questionable to even play that game. But the whole week, they knew he was going to play. I don't know if it's like the mind game thing, but he's very good at it. And to your point, media, myself included, we don't want to ask about injuries because we're not going to get an answer. So credit to Lane for kind of hiding all that, I will say.
Yeah, and when it comes to injuries and things like that, the opposite is true. Is whenever the media gets nuggets of information on media, they run with it, whether or not it's true. So Lane can basically say whatever, just like you just said. Well, Caden Prescorn's probably not going to play. Well, that's a little bit off the injury. Everybody runs with that, but Caden Prescorn was always going to play.
Yeah,
he is a master at this.
It's actually pretty impressive. Like he mentioned the wide receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if Watkins and Wells were out there for the first quarter. You know what I mean? It's just it's this game, and he's very, very good at it.
Yeah, and tomorrow we do our first keys of the season, and we talked about the Furman game and the run game today. Everybody talking about that is going to be the main one, but I don't think it's the main key as in how you think of a key to a football game. The reason Ole Miss wants to run the football is they want to announce to Furman that they want to try and run the football, so they will stack up to try and stop it. So Ole Miss can see if they have the backs to run against a team that knows it's coming. That is why they're doing that.
That's a really, really good point, Steven. And I think that's one of the questions that is going to have to be answered earlier in the season, because after Henry Parrish and Ulysses Bentley, there are some question marks in that room. So how are you going to establish them against a team like Furman, who, you should dominate the entire game, especially at the line of scrimmage? And where does that settle heading into week 2, week 3, and finally, that Kentucky game? Where's this run game going to go, and how effective can it be when you have guys on the outside like Juice Wells and Trey Harris, who you can essentially throw the ball to at any time?
Yeah, and I think this is a game, honestly, for Rashad Amos. I think he's the guy that's going to pop up. He's 235 pounds. He's going to be a superior athlete than anybody that's on the other side of the field. And with Ole Miss having their kinder, gentler fall camp, this is the first time where he gets to go out and play football a little bit. And I think he's going to shine whenever he's asked to do that.
100%. And it seems like there's going to be a constant competition on who's that third running back spot. And I think – Amos, obviously he played at Miami of Ohio. It's not a Power 5 school, but he's a proven player. He's proven that he can do it there. He has the size to do it. And if you're looking in terms of who's going to be that third running back, entering SEC play, it cannot hurt to have a guy, like you said, who's 6'1" and 235 pounds subbing in for Parrish and Bentley. So I'm excited to see what he has to offer against Furman, Steven.
Yeah, and the big thing that came out of this press conference for anybody that is watching this video is the fact that there were 3 Coke product bottles on the podium today after Lane Kiffin did his whole thing talking bad about Coke. Now there's a whole bunch of Cokes up there, and basically what that is a sponsor that got mad and they decided to get made whole.
Yeah, I mean, that was I couldn't really believe what was happening when it was actually taking place, Steven, because like Dasani, Coke, like they're everywhere. And for Lane to go up there and just obliterate it, like it was pretty incredible from Lane. And then Brian Kelly, I'm sure you saw from LSU in one of his press conferences, he was talking about how much he loved Coke products just to kind of jab back at Kiffin. So, it's funny stuff, and I'm surprised he didn't say anything about it today again.
Yeah, honestly, he's probably told not to under it's like you are not to do that again, and he shouldn't do it. That was absolutely ridiculous. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we're going to talk to Zach about JJ McGhee's and the Chucky Mullins Award and all of that stuff, and maybe some Jaxson Dart, who met with the media today as well. But before we get started with that, I do want to let you know, I want to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. It's an amazing game and simulation to where you get to step into the shoes of a head coach, lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of Ole Miss? Of course you can. We all do that every weekend. But from recruiting players to hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps to handling scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle that pressure? Ultimate College Football HC, it's completely free. It has no ads. It's 100% playable offline, and you can play on the go as you want when you want to do it. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Ole Miss fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, that's all one word, all caps, inside the game store and receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC, begin your coaching legacy today. Also, grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert and watch all of your favorite games. Or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime game, take a 5-hour energy shot to make it through the next day. 5-hour energy has that brand hardworking people like you have been trusting for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling that they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5-hour energy shots. Right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Stocked up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-hour energy shots. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can get 5-hour energy products today. Use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th and only on one order. It can't be used with other promotions as well. This code is not good on subscription orders. So go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, Zach. The 2 other players that hit the press conference today, JJ McGhee came in. He was the Chucky Mullins Award winner, so that was kind of like a free space for everybody. He came in wearing the number 38 jersey. He explained why on the road he was going to continue to wear 89, which makes a little bit of sense. I don't know if I totally agree with it, but it does at least make sense. All in all, I think JJ was the absolute perfect person to win that Chucky Mullins Award.
Yeah, JJ is a guy who Lane has talked about for several years now, just, the contributions that he does off the football field as well, and especially the volunteer work around the town of Oxford. As most people know, he's an Oxford guy. He's been here his whole life, and that's what I think makes this so much more incredible. The team calls him the mayor of Oxford, which it's just awesome. It's a surreal moment, and I'm glad he's enjoying it because I do think he was the correct choice. And, I understand he's wearing 89 on the road, but unlike Cedric Johnson, who just wore the patch, I think seeing that 38 out there in the vault, it's special, Steven. I'm really glad that he was the guy who Ole Miss decided for that.
Yeah, and like I said, we've talked about this a couple of times, and like I said, he's wearing it at home. That's where the majority of the people are going to see people wearing an Ole Miss home jersey. I'm kind of fine with that, but I do think that you need to wear the number. It just means the point. You need to at least wear the number once.
That is 100%. It's a big honor. They got videos of JJ calling his mom. Like it's a very special thing, and he's very humbled by it. He was talking about how, respected he feels. And again, he was the right guy 1,000%.
And Jaxson Dart also came in, also a kind of a free space for the first press conference of the year. And Jaxson says this offense is in a better spot than it was at this time last year. And they were pretty good a year ago. And Jaxson Dart is saying they're going to lean on the running game, which we talked about earlier. I think it all makes sense. Jaxson looks like a fairly comfortable guy in that setting right now.
Jaxson, he's locked in, Steven. From everything I've heard from people around the team, he is dialed in with this team 1,000% all the way. And again, like you said earlier, they're kind of hinting at, oh, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. So Furman prepares for it. And then again, just like you said, Steven, we're really going to get a true testament to what's his offensive line looking like in the run game and what's the role of Ulysses Bentley paired with Henry Parrish. But again, I'm excited for Jaxson. He seems so fired up. He clearly has such an established relationship with, Juice Wells, Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins, all those guys. He even complimented the younger players too, like Aiden Williams, Caden Lee, and Real White, who are kind of stepping in right now while Watkins and Wells are recovering from those injuries and doing a really nice job. So again, this Saturday, while we'll get a glimpse of those starters, I'd expect those younger guys like Aiden, Caden, and Norrell to really jump off the field for us because I think they're going to play a lot of that game against Furman.
Yeah, and if you look at this, Ole Miss right now currently is a 42.5-point favorite in this ball game. The over-under is currently at 60.5, so they're thinking it's somewhere going to be in the neighborhood of 51-10 or something like that. They think it's going to be that ballpark of the game. But here's my thing, Zach. With the new clock rules and everything, we haven't necessarily adjusted to what's happening, especially on over-unders.
Sure.
And the possessions are not like there were 7 offensive possessions and 7 defensive possessions in the Florida State Georgia Tech game. So the most you could have in that game was 49 points.
Sure.
If you scored a touchdown every single time, that would be 49 points. So I think these over-unders are going to start to go down. And you might see a situation that Ole Miss doesn't hit that number or even covers because of the lack of time and what they're going to have to deal with.
That's a really great perspective. I didn't even think about that, Steven. And credit to you for looking at that FSU Georgia Tech game. But I mean, if you're only getting the ball 7 times, you can only score so many points. So that's really interesting, especially for all the bettors listening. Really take that into consideration because Ole Miss is probably going to have their second and third team in the game. And if they're not getting the ball as many times, that 42.5 starts to look a little much when you really start to break it down. But still, with Lane Kiffin and this offense, you never know, Steven.
Yeah, and I think, do they score 70 against Mercer or something like that?
Something crazy.
So it's an FCS game, so weirdness can happen. And this is one thing that everybody needs to remember as well. Furman does not have their quarterback from a year ago that made them so good. Their defensive line is pretty good by FCS standards. It's a very good defensive line, but their secondary is completely stripped bare. So this whole run stuff might be a ploy. I'm just saying.
I completely agree. I think you're crazy if you're telling me that you're not going to throw the ball like 8 times in a row to Trey Harris and he's not going to catch it 8 times in a row against Furman. And that's no disrespect. I think that wide receiving core and Jaxson Dart are just on a much higher level even than last year, and that really is saying something.
Yeah, if they're explosive, the important thing in this football game, and like I said, tomorrow I do my keys about this game, but the one thing that you want to see from Ole Miss is them to be explosive. You don't want to see just methodically driving the ball down the field. You do want to see big plays.
That you're nailing it, Steven. In the final thing I'll touch on here is, Lane did comment he thinks this helmet technology is a game changer for him. Him and Charlie can talk to Jaxson. he can kind of set the offense up like we talked about last week, Steven. But it's scary times to be a defense going against Ole Miss. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I interviewed earlier in the week John Forcade, the quarterback, and he was talking about the helmet communication because he's done a little work in the arena leagues and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
To where all of that stuff happens, and he gave his perspective about that and how you don't overload the quarterback and how the trap is there for like Lane and Charlie to give the quarterback too much information that kind of slows it down a little bit. So we'll see exactly how it goes.
Yeah, I'm excited, Steven. It's game week, man. Let's do it.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Zach Moreth from the Rebel Walk. What do you got going on this week, bud?
Yeah, so, here at Ole Miss, we're working on some fraternity rush stuff and school starter today. So it's that time of year. Football's right around the corner, and it's an exciting time to be a Rebel, that's for sure.
Awesome. Take care, bud, and we'll talk to you later.
Appreciate you, Steven. Thank you.